In today's video, I'm going to walk you through exactly how to optimize your search campaigns inside Google Ads. And this is the exact process we've used to be able to generate conversion rates like 20% for this roofing company, and also conversion rates like just under 17% for this boiler or HVAC company, as you'd call it for those from the US that are watching. And these are the exact steps I'd recommend following if you're looking to get conversion rates of 15 to 20% or even higher in some cases. So, what we're going to do here is just pull up a Google Ads campaign and go through the full process of optimization as if we had to do this now from start to finish. So, the first place we always want to look is first of all on the left hand side here, go to Insights and Reports and then to our search terms. And we're going to look at the search terms first because out of all of the different things you could be doing to optimize your Google Ads campaign, the search terms report is where you're going to be looking at the most often, because a lot of the other tasks as we'll get onto inside this video only have to be completed once every week or in some cases once every month. And what you want to do inside your search terms report is pull up the time frame that you need to do your search term analysis for, because let's just say you have done search term analysis up as far as the 22nd here, so you might need to do it from the 23rd to the 29th. So that way, then you've already taken into consideration all what you've already done. And all you have to do here is go through all of the search terms that your ads are appearing for essentially, and anything that is irrelevant to the ads and landing pages of that ad group, you want to add as a negatives. Because let's just say here, for example, we have chimney repairs as a search term, which is obviously perfect because it's a chimney repair ad. And if they click on a chimney repair ad and go to a chimney repair landing page, the chances of getting the conversion is quite high. But let's just say the search term here for some reason was roof cleaning, and then they see an ad for chimney repair, and then they click on that ad and they go to a landing page that's obviously for chimney repair as well. The chances of them converting is very low when the search term is not relevant to the ad and landing page essentially. So what you want to ask yourself when going through the search terms report is this search term here highly relevant to the ad and landing page of this ad group? So that's really the main thing you want to do when going through your search terms report, is anything that is irrelevant, adding it as a negative to the ad group level. But what you can also do is if you do see any search terms here that aren't very relevant for the actual ad or ad group that it showed up in, but would be relevant either in another ad group or a new ad group that you haven't actually made yet, is that you still add it as a negative at the ad group level of this campaign, but you can take note of it that you can always make a new ad group with search terms including this keyword, where you can have an ad and a landing page that is highly relevant to that search term. And just to give you an idea of a few negatives we'd add here, all of these are to do with fireplaces as opposed to chimneys. So what you can do is take note of these if you do offer, for example, this service, and then you could always make a new ad group around that. But if it's completely irrelevant to all the services you offer, all you have to do is go to add negative keywords. I typically just add these at the ad group level because sometimes the search term itself might be relevant to another ad group inside your campaign. But if not, you can add it to the campaign level and then just press save. And that's essentially how you add the relevant search terms as negatives to your campaign, so you'll no longer show up for that search term. And what you can also do as well then is look at your search terms on a longer time frame and look at the ones that actually have the most impressions. And what you can do if you see that there are search terms that on average are getting you one impression or more per day, you can always add that as a new keyword to that ad group as well. So I wouldn't usually recommend just going through your search terms report and anything that you see is good quality, then you add it as a new keyword to your campaign. Because if you did that, it would just mean that you'll have a ton of keywords to manage and you'd have a lot of keywords that aren't getting a lot of search volume overall. So I'd only recommend adding new keywords when they're likely to actually get impressions to begin with and not just, one or two impressions here and there. And when it comes to doing your search terms as well, the more exact your keywords are, meaning if you're using exact match keywords, the less irrelevant search terms that you're going to have to add. But if you are using phrase and broad match keywords, then the chances are you will have quite a few negatives to add from your search terms report, as well as in advance as negative keywords to your campaign, because there simply will be more relevant traffic. And now we're going to move through the rest of the steps you have to complete when optimizing your Google Ads campaign. And if you'd like a free checklist that covers all of the steps that we're going through inside the video, and how to actually optimize your Google Ads campaign from start to finish, I'll leave a link for this checklist down below. And if you are a service-based business looking to have all of this done and implemented for you and just everything taken care of and done, there's also a link for that in the description down below. The next thing you want to do quite often as well is make sure your ad group structure actually makes sense. So what you really want to do is look at the ad groups in particular that have the most clicks and make sure that, they have a good cost per conversion, number of conversions, conversion rate, and so on. Because if you see that you have some ad groups that are getting a ton of clicks but no conversions, then the chances are that those ad groups are, blowing through your budget overall. Because if you notice that you're getting a few main ad groups that are getting a ton of clicks but no conversions, then the chances are that that's really going to hurt your conversion rate and cost per conversion overall. So if you do see that there are specific ad groups that are really getting a ton of traffic but just never seem to convert, I would recommend pausing those ad groups. And what you can also do as well is if you have a particular ad group that just seems to be getting all the impressions and all the clicks and barely any of the other ad groups ever really get any traffic, is you can always look at seeing, can you segment this ad group further into more ad groups if that ad group seems to be getting all the traffic. But if that ad group, all of the keywords literally mean the exact same thing as it is, then the chances are you're not going to need to segment further. But the main thing you want to do when checking your ad groups is just making sure that the ad groups that are getting the most traffic and spending the most budget are getting a lot of conversions and, getting you a good cost per conversion as well. The next thing you want to check as well is your budget and make sure that your campaign is actually spending your budget. So this campaign here, for example, has a budget of 40 euro per day, meaning that across a full 30-day month, that technically we're allowing Google to spend up to 1200. So it's actually slightly underspending the budget here. But just to give you some ideas of some things you can do if you're not spending your full budget, is first of all seeing what you're actually bidding, because the chances are is that if you're more flexible with your bid, then it'll be a lot easier to spend your budget here as well. So because of the fact that this campaign has quite a bit of conversion data now, we're actually using a portfolio bidding strategy where we have a target CPA, but we also have a max cost per click bid limit as well, just to make sure that we don't end up getting a ton of, individual clicks that are really expensive that don't convert. But if you do have a problem with spending your budget inside your campaign, then the chances are is that having a higher bid will especially help with that. And as we'll get onto in a minute with the Auction Insights report, if your impression share is low, and by low I mean anything really under maybe 60%, if your impression share is below 60%, for example, then you can definitely spend more budget by increasing your bid. But let's just say, on the other hand, that your impression share is already really high. Let's just say it's 80% and you're not spending your full budget, then that's an indication that you need to actually expand your targeting and that your bid might not be an issue at all. And what that would mean would be adding more keywords, more ad groups, literally just expanding your targeting wherever possible. That might mean expanding your ad schedule. So this campaign is running 24/7, but you might only be running certain hours of the week and you might not be targeting enough locations as well. So if you're not spending your full budget and your impression share is high, then the chances are you do need to expand your targeting, and that might mean even changing some keywords from exact to phrase match if you have to, because expanding your match types is a way to get more search volume overall. Whereas if your impression share is low, as we have in this campaign, then we could easily get more traffic and spend more budget simply by increasing the bid. But in this case as well, we do want to keep the cost per lead as low as possible. But if you do have a low impression share and do need to spend more budget, then increasing your bid is the simplest way of doing so. The next one then I'd recommend looking at is your ad copy. So what you want to do is go to one of your ad groups and then come down to ads. And the first thing you want to do here is just double check, first of all, that the headlines and descriptions have strong keyword focus, because that's the first biggest indication as to, whether someone will click on your ad or not. So because we have an ad group here with all chimney repair related keywords, it obviously makes sense to make sure that we have chimney repair mentioned in the headlines and descriptions of both of these ads. So that's the first thing you want to have, and it really is a case of having as many ad groups as necessary. And let's just say you do your keyword research and there's, a total of 150 keywords that are relevant for the services that you offer. If you need to make, 20 or 30 ad groups to accommodate those keywords and make sure that the ad you write for each of those keywords are as relevant as they can be, then you just need to make as many relevant ad groups as necessary. At the same time, if you do have a somewhat limited budget, there's no point in making hundreds of ad groups. But the point is that you need to have as much alignment as possible from keyword to ad, which we have here, and then obviously if they click on an ad, that they go to a landing page that's specific to that service as well. And what I'd recommend doing as well, especially in the ad groups that are getting quite a bit of traffic and impressions, is that you always want to be testing two ads to see which is going to get the highest click-through rate, because you always want to be trying to get as high a click-through rate as possible. And if you have an ad running in an ad group or two ads running in the ad group, and both of them are getting a lot of impressions but low click-through rate, then you might need to try and make a new ad. And if it already has highly relevant headlines and descriptions with keyword focus, then you might need to test out different things. For example, having something like get a free quote in minutes pinned in position 2. Anything you can think of to make your ad more compelling and more likely to be clicked on overall while still maintaining high relevancy, then the higher your click through rate will be. And the higher your click through rate will be, it's going to help a lot with the quality scores of your keywords. And the higher your quality score, the higher your ad rank, and the more Google will reward you overall by showing your ad up higher, giving you a better cost per clicks. So that's really why you want to make sure that the ads that you're running have high click through rates. We're just looking at this ad group only here for the last 30 days, but something worth mentioning as well is your actual conversion rate and cost per conversion, because it's not all about having a high click through rate if the cost per conversion and conversion rate aren't good. So you obviously want to pay close attention to this as well. But not only looking at the last 30 days, but let's just look at all time for this campaign. We see that the cost per conversion and conversion rates here for these two ads are very similar. So we would keep both of these running, even though this one does have the slightly higher click through rate. But if you do notice that one ad out of the two has a better click through rate and better conversion rate overall, then what I'd recommend doing in general is keeping the winning ad, pausing the losing ad, and making a new ad that resembles the winning ad, but maybe make one or two changes to see what you can do to try and beat the previous winner in terms of click through rate and conversion rate. The next thing that you want to do then is come back to the actual campaign level and go down to keywords. You can also look at the all time for this or on a decent time horizon overall and look at the keywords inside your campaign that have gotten the most clicks. And what you want to do here is really just tidy up your keywords as much as possible, because if you see that a specific keyword is generating a lot of clicks but no conversions or very little conversions, then you can go straight to pausing that keyword like we've done here that only got one conversion from 23 clicks. And pausing keywords that aren't performing well is obviously the easiest option. But what you can also do as well is select the keyword that's not performing well, go to the actual search terms of that keyword. And if you see that most of the clicks are coming from irrelevant search terms, then obviously you can make sure that you add those as negatives, and then it might not actually be a problem with the keyword itself. But as you can see here, our actual keyword, roofers Drogheda, the search term itself of that keyword actually got most of the clicks. So that's why we just completely paused that keyword in this case, because there was nothing really else we could do. It clearly just didn't work as well as the other keywords. And when that happens, you can just pause that keyword and really just focus your budget on the areas that seem to be actually getting you conversions for what you're spending. The next thing you want to do as well on a regular basis is just check your recommendations and see if you have a bunch of recommendations here that you either have to accept or dismiss. And what you want to do is just go ahead and dismiss most of these as much as possible to bring your campaign optimization score back up to 100%. Not that this metric itself really matters for performance or anything like that. It's just the more recommendations that you have from Google that you haven't given an answer on, whether you even want to just dismiss it completely, the more likely as well that Google reps will just reach out trying to make changes, to your campaigns overall. So you might as well just, dismiss these recommendations as often as possible. And on that point as well, it's also worth going to all campaigns and just checking auto apply to make sure that you don't have any auto apply recommendations turned on. And lastly, on the point of recommendations as well, or auto apply in assets, then what you also want to do is go to more, account level automated assets, go to more again, and then advanced settings. What you want to do here then is just make sure that all of these are turned off as well, especially if you want to make all of your own assets, because you know what's likely going to perform better for your business in terms of the way your ads are displayed as a whole. We'd always prefer making our own assets than having these turned on. So on the point of recommendations and things being automatically applied by Google, it's just worth having these turned off as well. There is also another point as well I wanted to mention on the topic of keywords is that for any service-based business looking to run Google Ads, I always recommend starting out with exact match keywords. And if you can get enough traffic with exact match keywords to spend your budget and get the conversions you need, then you can stick with exact match as long as you need to. But what I would say is that if you've maxed out the amount of impressions that you can possibly get with exact match, then that's when you can always add a phrase match keyword for the best performing exact match keyword. So you can also have a phrase match keyword in there as well. So let's just say the best performing keyword inside your campaign is roof repair near me. Then you can also have roof repair near me as a phrase match keyword if you really need to expand volume overall. And usually when you pick the best performing exact match keyword to also have as a phrase match, so you can still keep the exact match one running, that's when I've usually found phrase match to work best, is that when you usually just use the best performing exact match one when trying to decide which phrase match keyword to use in the first place. Because I have noticed that, even phrase match keywords now do seem to be a lot more irrelevant and lead to a lot more irrelevant searches than what it used to. Because even sometimes I'd see in the search terms report that competitor names and things like that come up in the search terms for phrase match keywords. Whereas that used to be more of only what you would see in broad match. But it is worth mentioning that if you have maxed out the amount of impressions you can get on a particular match type, then you might need to add a few variants of the looser match type in there as well. And the next thing we can look at as well while in the keyword tab is our keyword quality scores. Now, what I would say in general, it is ideal to aim for quality scores of 7 or more on your keywords. If you have a quality score of 7, then you know you're doing well because you're getting a discounted cost per click. And overall, Google likes the way your keywords, ads, and landing pages are lined up. And now we can see in this campaign, the main keywords that have gotten most of the clicks and most of the conversions as well all actually have a keyword quality score of 5 in this campaign. And what you want to do is be able to see, what factors led to this quality score. So in columns here, we can go to modify columns. Now we already have this pulled up, but just to show you, under quality score, have quality score, expected click-through rate, landing page experience, and ad relevance all pulled up. So you can see how Google are rating each of these individual metrics. So if we had ad relevance, expected click-through rate, and landing page experience all above average, then our quality score will be a 10. And what you might notice quite often that while running campaigns, especially nowadays, is that ad relevance is quite easy to get above average, and anyone should be able to get an above average ad relevance. The landing page experience then can be a bit hit or miss because sometimes Google will just give you an above average landing page experience and sometimes it won't. And usually, whatever it gives you to begin with, it can be quite stubborn to actually improve this score. But what I have noticed with time is that the more conversions a particular keyword gets, and also when it comes to how well Google thinks users are to likely, interact with your landing pages as well, this score usually goes up as well when they see that people are actually spending a lot of time on your landing page, that it loads quickly, is fully optimized on desktop and mobile. So this landing page experience score often goes up, once you've gotten more data inside your campaign. But these days, especially, the expected click through rate portion is literally just what Google expects your click through rate to be. And even on a lot of these keywords here, that the click through rate is over 10%, which is a pretty decent click through rate, the expected click through rate is below average, even though usually having a decent click through rate is supposed to influence the expected click through rate. So, what I would say about quality scores is that I wouldn't go pausing keywords solely based on quality score. At the end of the day, your conversion rate and cost per conversion is always going to be the most important metrics to look at. But if you would like a more detailed guide on how to improve your quality scores overall, I'll leave the link up above to a separate video that goes into a lot more detail on quality scores. And lastly, on the point of quality scores as well, it's worth mentioning is that if you have a lot of keywords inside your campaign and you have a bunch of keywords that have a quality score of 3 or below, and those particular keywords aren't really doing anything, not getting much traffic or conversions, then you can always pause or delete those keywords to just clean up your campaign as a whole. But if you do have a keyword that has a quality score of 3, for example, but it has a really high conversion rate and really high click through rate and everything else looks good, I wouldn't go pausing it solely based on quality score because we have seen that sometimes where there's massive discrepancies between the quality score and how well the keyword is performing in reality. And now the next place we also want to look is our auction insights report. And so what we want to do inside our auction insights report is get an idea of our overall impression share, so how often our ads are appearing for the number of eligible searches that they could be appearing for in our area. And then, when they do appear, how often do we appear in the top 3 positions, which is the top of page rate, and then the absolute top of page rate is how often they appear at the number 1 spot. So we see here in this campaign, for example, that even though our impression share is quite low, that our top of page rate and absolute top of page metrics are quite good. So we know that at least a good proportion of the time our ads do appear, that 40% of the time they actually get the number 1 position, which is really good, considering we're in a very competitive industry where there's a lot of roofing companies and it's quite a competitive area as well with a lot of competitors. And it's also worth looking as well at overlap rates, so seeing which of these competitors we appear alongside the most often. Also seeing, position above rate, which is how often do these competitors appear above us. and then outranking share then, which is how often we rank above these competitors. And what's worth doing as well with these competitors that we appear alongside quite often, let's just take this URL here, for example. What we can do with this is go to the Ads Transparency Center and enter their URL in here. So what we want to do here is be able to see that the ads that they're running, just to make sure that they're not doing anything too special with their ads that would likely be getting them a lot more attention and taking attention away from you. Because if all of a sudden, a new competitor enters the market, and that's what you also really want to do in the Auction Insights report as well, is keep an eye out for new competitors. Because if a new competitor suddenly enters and they have a really good, offer in their ad copy and they start getting all the clicks, then Google are going to be more incentivized to show their ad above yours. So you just want to make sure that your competitors aren't really doing anything special that you're not already doing, and making sure that your ads are more compelling compared to theirs overall. So even if you don't have the same budget that they have, you can still outcompete them in a lot of cases by having highly relevant and highly compelling ads. And if we were to look, for example, at the last 30 days versus all time, we see that our impression share has actually gone up, which is a good thing. But let's just say our impression share has gone down over the last 30 days, then it might be worth considering trying to increase our budget if possible, and also maybe adding in new keywords as well, especially if there's more competitors in the market, which only leads to increased cost per clicks, more competition overall. So that's why really the Auction Insights report is something you want to keep an eye on as regularly as possible as well. So the next thing we want to look at then is our assets. And first of all, make sure that we're actually running all the relevant assets that make sense to run for our campaign, but also review the performance of each of those assets as well. Because just like our ads, we don't want to be running any assets that are getting a lot of clicks but no conversions when there are other assets that are getting a much higher conversion rate. So we also want to review the conversion metrics of these. So looking at our image assets here, for example, we found that for trades businesses especially, that van photos works really well. If you have photos of the team or anything like that, those also work really well, because out of everything really, those are going to inspire a lot more trust and give you a higher chance of getting the click on the ad versus stock photos that anybody can use. And we can see here from these image assets that they have high click-through rates and also have high conversion rates as well. But the main thing I like to do when going through all of these assets is mainly just looking at the conversion rate and cost per conversion, because those are always going to be the most important metrics to look at. But obviously click-through rate as well, because that gives you an indication as to how well the asset actually resonates with the user on the other end. But apart from that, then you also want to just make sure that all of the other assets are in place and running okay. So the business name, the business logo, your site links. So you can see here for this roofing campaign that we have a bunch of campaign level site links added. Now, in some campaigns as well, it might make more sense to add site links to the ad group only, because for certain ad groups it might not make sense to have certain site links showing. But in general, if most of the ad groups are similar and the same services are being offered most of the time, then it can be fine for the most part to have campaign level assets or site links, especially if they have good conversion rates and cost per conversion, because as I mentioned, those really are the metrics that matter over anything else. Now, we don't need to worry about the headline or description assets, but it's also worth having callouts as we do here, which are simply just, benefits or bullet points of like why they should choose you when they see the ad. So you're just trying to give them more reasons to click on the ad really with your call out assets. And structured snippets then, which we've never found to really get much traffic overall, they're still worth having because you can simply group different benefits or features of why they should choose you as well. And it's always worth having a call asset in there as well, because if someone just wants to make the phone call, they can call directly from the ad and then they don't even need to go to the landing page to be convinced to make the call. Especially if they just need to get the job done and want to call someone right away, you always want to have your call asset there as well. And so, as I mentioned, when it comes to going through your assets, just make sure all of the appropriate assets are running. And then the assets that are running and getting traffic, just make sure the conversion metrics are looking good as well. And if anything has a very high cost per conversion, just pausing if necessary. The next point worth mentioning then, and what can really be the make or break of any Google Ads campaign, is having the right bid set and the right bidding strategy overall. So, depending on where your campaign is currently at, that's really what's going to determine which bidding strategy that you should use. But you should always just keep an eye out overall that you are using the right bidding strategy and bid for where you're currently at. And not to get into too much detail on this, because I have plenty of other videos on bidding strategies in particular on the channel, and I've always given my thoughts on, maximize clicks versus maximize conversions and all of that, is that I'd always recommend, until you have a decent amount of conversion data inside your campaign, either using maximize clicks with a max CPC bid limit, or if you find that a lot of the keywords have different cost per clicks inside the keyword planner, you can also use a manual CPC bid strategy, either maximize clicks or manual CPC until you get at least 20-30 conversions overall. And then once you get to the point where you have your first 20-30 conversions, you can either switch to max conversions or ideally go straight to a target CPA, especially if you've gotten at least 15 to 20 conversions, but in the last 30 days. So if you only got about 20 conversions over 2 months, then that wouldn't be enough, in my opinion, to go straight to target CPA. But if those 20 conversions were over the last 30 days, then it makes a lot more sense to go to target CPA. And when it comes to knowing what bid to set when you're using target CPA as well, I simply like to just look at the last 30 days of data and see what our cost per conversion is roughly in that time. So you can see here in this campaign that the cost per conversion is €41 and our bid is set for our target CPA to €38. So that's a fine bid to set for now. But if this campaign had a cost per conversion of, let's just say, €32, then our target CPA would actually be a bit higher than it would need to be, and then we'd be able to start bringing that down. But the goal here is to get this cost per conversion down, like the actual cost per conversion down as much as possible, because then we can bring our target CPA down with that and not risk not actually being able to get traffic because our bid is set too low. So overall, when it comes to the bidding strategy that you set, it completely depends on the amount of conversion data that the campaign has. The only exception to that actually would be if you have an account with a lot of other campaigns that have data, then yes, you could go straight to maximize conversions on a new one. But apart from that, just look at how much conversion data that you have first. And if you are at a point when you're using target CPA, look at your actual cost per conversion over the last 30 days to determine what your target CPA should be. And what you can also do as well inside your campaign is review any bid adjustments that you've set. But it is worth mentioning for this is that if you're using smart bidding like target CPA, then there isn't really any point having any bid adjustments because Google, using an automated bidding strategy or smart bidding, does all of that bidding in real time for you. But it is worth doing if you're using manual CPC, for example, that you can look at your, for example, devices, and if mobile phone or computer is converting better over the other, then you can add a positive bid adjustment for that. The same thing applies for the ad schedule. So if a particular day of the week converts better than another, you can add a bid adjustment for that. Same for your locations. And same for your audiences or demographics as well. So I won't spend too much time talking about this because if most campaigns these days are using smart bidding, then making bid adjustments aren't going to make any real difference to your campaign overall. But if you are using manual bidding and would like to make bid adjustments for different days of the week, locations, devices, and demographics, I have separate videos as well on the channel that go into more detail on how to make those bid adjustments and how to know what bid adjustments to set. But one of the next things as well you want to do is just look at the locations that you're targeting inside the campaign. And if any particular locations just aren't converting, then simply removing that location might make sense. Let's just say, for example, you're targeting 5 or 10 locations here, and then one of those locations is getting a bunch of clicks but no conversions, then you can absolutely remove that location and then just target the rest of the locations that are getting a better cost per conversion overall. What you should also do as well is make sure that all your landing pages are working and fully optimized. So by that, I mean look at all of the actual URLs of each of your ad groups and make sure that your landing pages are loading properly. And it's just worth checking this every so often just to make sure that there isn't anything wrong with your landing pages loading, because you don't want to be paying for clicks that aren't actually going to your landing page. And just to pull up a draft of a general landing page template as well that most kind of service-based businesses would use when you're looking at your landing pages as well, seeing what you can do to optimize these landing pages as well, whether it be running A/B tests where you're sending half of the traffic to one version of the landing page and the other half of the traffic to the other. So you're running a 50-50 A/B test where you're really just trying to optimize your conversion rate as much as possible. So let's just say in one version of the landing page, you have a big form here that they can fill out. Or on another version of the landing page, you might have a photo here of the service that you offer. And instead of a big form, you just have a get a quote button where a light box will pop up where they can enter in their contact details, different things like that. But the main thing you really want to do to optimize your landing page is just make sure the landing page loads quickly and make sure it's optimized on both desktop and on mobile as well. And those are just some of the main things you really want to do to make sure that your landing page is fully optimized for conversion. So obviously making sure that the landing page works first of all, and then when your actual landing pages are getting enough traffic, especially in the ad groups that are getting a lot of clicks, performing some A/B tests and doing different variations of each of those landing pages just to see if any one of those landing pages convert a lot better than the other. So that way, then it's almost the same thing you're doing with your ads, the way that you're always trying to improve your click through rates. You can also do that with your landing pages as well and always try to improve your conversion rates. The next thing you want to do as well is under tools and exclusion lists is that you want to make sure that you have a negative keyword list that you've applied that has a lot of, for example, generic words that you know in most cases you never really want to appear for. And also, apart from irrelevant words that you never know you want to appear for, adding things like competitor names as well. This is where I'd add a general negative list. And when you see searches come up that you just know are completely irrelevant to what you offer, you can always continuously add them to your list. But obviously, then as well, when you're doing your negatives, you can simply just add them to the negative keyword list inside your campaign. They don't always have to be added to this specific list because most of the time you're doing your search term analysis, you want to just make sure it's added at the ad group level if it's not going to be fully irrelevant for all of your other ad groups. But another thing worth doing as well is every so often going through your full negative keyword list from start to finish and making sure that you don't have any negatives in here that could actually be blocking you out from potential good quality traffic. Because let's just say you accidentally added a broad match negative to your campaign where it shouldn't have been a broad match negative, that could be blocking out a ton of potential relevant searches. So the purpose of going through this negative keyword list as well every so often is to just make sure that you haven't added anything in there that could be blocking you from appearing for the searches that you've always wanted to appear for the whole time. And the last thing as well that's worth checking really as often as possible is that your conversion tracking is still working, because it can happen sometimes that all of a sudden your conversion tracking might stop working, and if it does, it'll just need to be fixed as soon as possible. Because if you are tracking form submissions and phone calls for your campaigns, you really want to make sure that any time one of these actions take place, that they are being tracked as a conversion inside your campaign, especially when you're using smart bidding and you're trying to optimize for lower cost per conversion overall. So those were all the main optimization tasks that's really worth paying attention to inside any Google Ads campaign. And I know we covered a lot inside this video as well, so if you do have any questions about anything we covered, feel free to leave a comment down below. And if you do like this Google Ads related content as well, feel free to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. And if there are any other specific aspects of what we covered inside this video or any other aspects of Google Ads as a whole that you would like a further detailed explanation on, I'll leave the link up above to a playlist that contains individual videos that goes into a lot more detail on each of those individual aspects when starting and running a Google Ads campaign.